Well, today we're going to be talking about procrastination. And maybe it's not a problem for you, or maybe you've been spinning your wheels trying to get started with studying, and maybe you've made progress here, maybe you've made progress there, but you're finding that distractions are coming up. People are calling and needing you, or you're just tired, you've had a long day, and you just need to take a break. Well, if that's you, then this session about 4 ways that are super reliable to stop procrastination in its tracks as you prepare for your radiation therapy board exam, well, it's for you. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get into it. All right, let's start it per usual. Our tutor sessions, you've been studying for the boards. You've probably got an idea of what you're studying. So how did it go? Did you accomplish your study plan this week? If so, pat yourself on the back, way to go. And that might be as simple as you decided you're going to study radiation therapy procedures, like um, treatment methods for prostate cancer and all the different sites. And um, you might study epidemiology and etiology. That is the incidence of cancer and why cancer, like the origin of cancer. Also, it's good to reflect and ask yourself, how effective were you in your study methods? What was the length of time you spent on studying? So length of time doesn't always associate with effectiveness. You can have a brief study period that was effective at its one little goal. And you might have a bunch of little brief study periods, focused study sessions. And sometimes I find it helpful to study until you are hitting a wall, until your eyes kind of are just not picking up the information anymore. Not to the point of burnout or exhaustion, but if it takes 45 minutes to go through a topic and you just find yourself not absorbing that information or not understanding it at the rate you may normally have, take a break, come back to it at another time. That might be all you have room for for today or for that moment. And over time, especially as your study skills improve, as you begin utilizing new methods that I'm going to be sharing in the newsletter, or maybe that you've discovered on your own, the rate of the length of time that you require to get that similar information is going to decrease, and you're going to become more efficient. Also ask yourself, did the material connect with what you know? Relatability and relevance are two key predictors that it's going to stick. Our brains love holding on to relevant information. It's how our caveman ancestors survived. If it was relevant to today, if it helped us survive or thrive, we were going to hold on to it. And however, if you're not finding connections of why PDD is inversely proportional to distance from the source, or if you're not finding connections to why cobalt has a half-life of, you fill in the blank, number of years. If you're not able to make those relationships and why those things exist, it's going to be a lot harder to hold on to those in your mind. So relate it to your experience in clinic, relate it to what you know and studied as maybe your foundation of radiation therapy, or even physiology in general and anatomy in general. Here we go. 4 reliable ways to stop procrastination in its tracks. This is preparing you for your radiation therapy board exam. So what's the problem? The problem is sometimes you intend on studying, your intention is there, you really want to study, you should study, but you're too tired, you're feeling overwhelmed, your friend, your parent, your sibling, your child, they need you, they're calling on you. You pick up the phone and with the intention of looking up something study related, and you see a notification for a Facebook notification, an Instagram notification, a YouTube notification, an email notification. You got to respond to your child's teacher. So it boils down to distractions. Maybe you feel like, maybe you don't feel like studying. Maybe you feel like you deserve a break. Maybe you feel like you don't have to study. Maybe you've never been one that needs to study in the past. Maybe you find studying miserable. Maybe you don't know what to study. Maybe you just don't feel good. Maybe you're not proficient with the topic you're studying. You're not an expert. You don't study it perfectly. And so you're feeling like, man, if I can't get this perfectly, then what's the use? Well, maybe you're just not interested in the topic. You just don't find how it relates and why you need to know it, and it feels maybe boring or unneeded. So you power through it with willpower, right? That's how you do anything. You just got to get motivated enough. And willpower only takes you so far. It relies on motivation in order for the inspiration to turn to action. So you don't become productive until you feel motivated. Well, what happens if you're too tired after a long day in clinic or a long day at work and you're just like not feeling it, and your family's been making, you've been doing things for your family and you're just tired. So you don't have the motivation, so you don't study. It leads to this reliance on motivation means that we only study when we feel like it, when we feel motivated enough, and it becomes inconsistent because we all have our days where the requirements, the things that are begging for our attention and energy, ebb and flow. Some days we're more available than others. And so it leads to an inconsistent study regimen. And over time, it's demotivating to see the roller coaster ride of motivation increase and then the sad decline in motivation and the consequential delay of progress, and then the rise in motivation, and then the demotivation that comes after you get distracted and you lose focus, and now you have to circle back and redo what you studied in the beginning. And eventually you risk leading to burnout. So as I described, the motivation problem is kind of like a roller coaster. It's if on this axis you have motivation over time, at first you intend on, let's study, physics interactions. And you're really motivated, you put in maybe a good 1 to 2 hours. That's great. And then the next day you get busy and work comes up and you're tired and you kind of hit a wall right around something about like Compton scattering, and you just aren't getting it. You don't understand the interactions, and plus you're busy and you're tired and maybe you don't study and your motivation drops. And then the next day you're kind of feeling a little guilty. And so you're going to do maybe 2 to 4 hours of studying. Your motivation is high, and maybe you actually complete like 2 hours. You get through Compton scattering, but it was all you could do to get through it. And then the next day, maybe you're not feeling so well, or maybe you're feeling like you deserve a break, and your motivation drops, distractions increase. And then the next maybe week, you come back to it with a full intent of catching up. But by a week that's gone by, now you have to retract what you did on the Compton scattering and go even further with the other interactions like pair production or Bremsstrahlung. And so you're demotivated again because maybe other things come up. And it's a cycle. And instead of going like this, where it ebbs and flows, it actually, unfortunately, leads people to kind of go like this, where eventually they're at like zero and they risk burning out. So one thing that I learned from a book I read was it really helps if on this axis you have, say, motivation. This is a little graph that demonstrates the point at which we take on a behavior. In this case, the point at which we start studying, an ability on this axis. So ability on this axis, motivation on this axis, and the graph looks something like this. So basically, anywhere on this line, we'll take action. Well, how do I interpret this graph and why is this important? Well, imagine you have some motivation, you have some ability, and you need maybe equal parts of both to do something like studying. Or maybe you have no ability, absolutely no ability. Maybe you stink at the topic. Maybe you're not so good. Maybe you're terrible with, physics interactions. And so what that means is you're going to need a lot of motivation here. You're going to have to be way up on here. You're going to have to have like a 10, level 10. If maybe this is level 10 and that's level 10. Maybe this is a 5 and that's a 5. Maybe this is a 1. So if you have like level 1 skill or ability to really understand physics interactions, you're going to need high motivation for to get started with the studying of the physics interactions. I think it'd be better if instead of generally physics interactions, maybe we said, um, the Compton effect or Compton scattering, because it's hard to make a generalization that you're terrible in all of the physics interactions. Um, because as we'll learn later, it's actually more beneficial to break things down into little component parts. You're probably not terrible with all physics, and you're probably not terrible with all radiation physics, but maybe you're just like, I'm terrible at Compton scattering. I don't get it. I don't understand how the energy gets produced. No idea, whatever. We'll find out later that as we break things down into simpler parts, we can bring our ability closer or higher so that way we don't need as much motivation. So in the way the scale goes too is say you don't have very much motivation at all. Maybe you hate studying the Compton effect or something. You hate it. And it's like level 2 or something. Well, that means you're going to need a lot of ability in order to start the action of studying. And that's where a lot of us are stuck, right? Because we're students for a reason. It means we're lacking in ability. So oftentimes what we make up for is in motivation. So we're looking to be highly motivated, so we'll start the active studying because we have very low ability. But I have a better solution than this. This is helpful. But basically, this graph is saying you benefit from breaking things down into its component parts and making it as easy as possible. So that way, your ability with the easy thing is high, and therefore you don't need a lot of motivation to do it. So it's all about breaking it down into simple parts and not overwhelming yourself. So this looks familiar. Is willpower the way? Well, there's another method. There's the willpower enhanced way. Willpower enhanced way actually relies on habits. And that's where we can create habits and circumnavigate the whole willpower conundrum. We can reserve the willpower in areas where we're really challenged and we need to push through and overcome maybe some barrier to understanding. But for other routine things, we can break it down to the most small component parts and build habits, study habits, and build good, successful study environments that help make taking action frictionless. So whereas willpower depends on motivation, willpower enhanced depends on habits. Where willpower depends or is rather inconsistent, since we're relying on habits, it's fairly consistent. And since we're not utilizing motivation as fuel to get into the study session, we're not decreasing that energy within us. And so therefore, we're not getting closer and closer to burnout like we might be with the willpower dependent way. So the study method that I learned from a program about studying tips and tricks boils down to the BED system. And what the BED system is it's an acronym for burn the ships, environment, distraction cheat sheet, scheduling, and minimum viable goals. If I didn't say it, it's the BEDS M system. But what are these? We're going to go through each of these one by one. And the burn ship strategy, the burn ships is this terminology that kind of comes from a Spanish conquistador who led his army in their many boats to some shore to conquer it. And to steal his men's resolve, he commanded the men to burn the ships and provide no option or no for retreat. And I'm not suggesting you burn anything of yours, no property. What I'm merely suggesting is that you set high consequences of failure. So I'm going to step back for 1 second. I want to explain that this BEDS M system is not for you to pick and choose what works best for you. Oftentimes, as reported by my mentor in this program that I'm taking about study techniques, he has cited that his experience with this BEDS M system and his students that he teaches are like 70% effective. And what he finds in the 30% that are not effective in breaking through their procrastination are that they didn't adhere to the whole system. They decided to just take one of the pieces of the puzzle instead of integrating all of them. And these are really complementary of one another and synergistic. So I encourage you to use all of them, especially if procrastination is something you're currently struggling with. So how you set high consequences of failure, I did this with a client of mine where I did something where she was studying for her radiation therapy board exam and she was struggling with always pushing back the test date, pushing back the test date, pushing back the test date. She's never ready. So I said, listen, if you push the test date back a fourth time, let's set up some stopgap, something that makes it a little painful. Let's put some skin in the game besides the amount of money you'll sacrifice to do this. So I asked her, would you be game to set up a challenge where if you push back your exam for the fourth time, you will pay a charity that you choose $200. She said, ooh, $200? Like she's working part-time and even less actually during that time around the exam. So it was tough for her. She's like, $200? And she had already paid for my program and it wasn't cheap either. And so she's I don't know. She said, after thinking about it and after we talked about it, what the potential of having the skin in the game might do for her, she decided, okay, yes. And that accountability that she had with this that I held her to is, by a certain deadline, if she had not taken the exam, then she would owe this charity $200. And who is bitter about giving to a charity? Why is that a motivator? Well, the thing was she had to choose a charity that she hated. Now, how do you find a charity that you hate? Well, I just looked up a bunch of I Googled, stupid charities or the worst charities ever or something like that. And we came up with like zombie kids or something like that. And it was so stupid. I don't remember. It was like some like 5K race maybe where you dress up like a zombie and you raises money for I don't remember, but it was something silly. And she's like, I'll donate to that one because I don't want them getting my money. It's just such a stupid charity. And so that's basically what we did. And it worked. She took her exam, passed, and she was super happy. I can't say that that was the only thing, but it definitely helped. And some consequences that would be high might be you could there was Thomas Frank, a popular YouTuber, that he was trying to overcome his procrastination, and he had some automatic account set up to send hit, the first 50 people that he had on his email list $50. So 50 times 50, I think that's $2,500 if my math is correct. And that's a lot of money. And he didn't want to A, do that, and B, probably couldn't afford it. And so the thing that was preventing that from happening is he had to like log his study session. So he set up some complex system where if he didn't log his study session, at a certain time of day, right after he woke up, because that's what he was committed to, is doing, or I think it was about, instead of a study session, I think it was about sleeping in. Like he didn't want to sleep in. And so if he didn't do this like 10 minutes from after his alarm went off, the email automatically gave money to like these 50 followers. So that helped him. So that gave him a little high consequences, little skin in the game. You might, make an accountability with a friend of yours that's in the radiation therapy program, or a family member, or um, you might ask your parent or loved one to put your phone in a safe until you study, until you show your work, or maybe they quiz you, and then you can have your phone for the day. Um, you can get creative with it, but it's a powerful strategy to help motivate you. The other one is environment. And this is very important. And it has a picture of a cookie jar because, how many people can't resist cookies? Sweets, donuts, chocolates. When patients bring them in, they got to try them because they're so delicious. Well, how many of us also have you heard in clinic when you receive donuts, it's like, oh, I shouldn't, but they look so good. It's that feeling of guilt and temptation, right? So removing temptations from your environment, removing the cookie jar prevents us from reaching our hands into the cookie jar. Other temptations or distractions might be communicating with your family, friends, loved ones, that you're setting up a sacred time and not to disturb you during the sacred time. It might be between the hours of 3 and 4. It might be between the hours of 10 a.m. to noon. Whatever your sacred time is, you might put your phone on airplane mode, maybe even put it in another room as you leave your house, away from laundry and dishes and that mess on the floor and a pile of papers that all of a sudden needs cleaning when you need to study. And you leave your environment, go to somewhere like a library, or maybe a cafe, maybe a restaurant that's really slow during the day, and essentially just remove temptations, right? Whether that's if you use your computer to study, if you're working with an online course, setting it up to where you have maybe incognito mode set up with your YouTube, so your favorite YouTuber doesn't pop up with your favorite videos or his new or her new latest video. So that way, when you're on YouTube looking at different radiation therapy videos like yours truly, you're not getting all these temptations, as these platforms like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook are designed specifically to keep you on their platforms. So maybe incognito mode, maybe by taking, removing windows that are going to be distractions for you on your computer. Maybe, removing certain tabs that you have pulled up that are maybe like past shopping instances or trip you're planning. Maybe just closing all those out, or disabling notifications on your phone. Um, and yeah, you can do a focus mode sometimes on your phone. So there's things you can learn to set your environment up for success. They're just a Google away, how to set up your phone for a distraction-free setting. Speaking of distraction, our third procrastination tip for the BEDSM strategy is a distraction cheat sheet. And this is as simple as having a piece of paper beside you as you're during your focused study time, and simply going through your focused study time and noting down distractions that may pop up. Oh, I had a notification pop up on my phone. What was that notification? It was for a package that was delivered. Well, maybe you turn off your Amazon delivery notifications, but you don't do it right then and there during your study session, as that would be a distraction. You just simply take a moment, write it down, and then as you write down 1, 2, or 3 distractions that have popped up, you begin understanding all the ways in which your environment is not set up for success. And then it's your job to then go back after your study session and take care of those Amazon package notification alerts. It's your job to maybe remind your family and friends that this is a sacred time and not to be disturbed. Maybe it's your time to find a different environment, or basically handle your distractions and then come back. And I would suggest doing this at least 3 different study sessions, consecutive study sessions, so that way you really get a feel over time what about your environment could use improvement, and then do these improvements. Scheduling, as an aside, set up a schedule to improve what your clarity of what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. You can block study sacred sessions throughout your calendar. That's a whole nother thing in itself. I could do a whole lesson on it, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on scheduling. But scheduling is helpful because it tells you what you're going to do next, and you don't have to spend a lot of mental bandwidth every single day and willpower to say, oh yeah, I need to study. Well, when am I going to study? It's already been figured out earlier in the week, or it's already been figured out. Maybe you have a set time, so you figured it out some other time in the past. But they're very helpful. They improve, context switching. So oftentimes when you switch between tasks, there's this ramp down and ramp up that costs our energy and attention. And when you have a schedule that you can keep, you simply move from task to task much quicker, and you don't have to think about what's next and what not to do, what to do, and that kind of thing. All right, and lastly, number 4 with the BEDSM system is a minimum viable goal, which is a goal that's the easiest and most achievable. That it's the one goal that would be laughable if you could not do it. And I'm talking about something as simple as taking 3 deep breaths, something as simple as looking away from your phone or the TV. Like, it's super simple. And you might say, well, how in the world is looking away from your phone or your TV going to do anything for my studying habits? Well, let's break it down. Actually, So imagine your goal is to study 2 hours. That's what you blocked on your calendar. So you're going to study 2 hours, and maybe it's scheduled for every Thursday from 10 to 12. But what's happening over the weeks is that from 10 to 12, you're getting distracted, and maybe you start, but then there's a lot of stops. Um, you're losing focus, you're getting demotivated for all the reasons we've kind of listed before. It's like you're just not accomplishing the 2 hours. You're essentially procrastinating for those 2 hours. Therefore, you're not doing the 2 hours. It's not a reasonable thing to believe you can do. And so what do? We maybe break it down into the component parts. We basically are backwards engineering what it takes to get to 2 hours. So what if in that 2 hours we studied maybe for half that time? Maybe we just plan on studying for 1 hour. Like, okay, well, maybe if we do 1 hour, then we can just stop. We'll just tell ourselves, I can study just 1 hour, then I'll stop, and I'll just put it away and call it a success because, at least 1 hour is better than nothing, right? So versus nothing, 1 hour is way better because I was procrastinating so much and unproductive that I wasn't getting anything out of my two hour study sessions. But then let's break it down even further. You know, what if we did, study for just 30 minutes? And then we just tell ourselves, what if I just studied for 30 minutes? Because 30 minutes is still better than nothing. And I was doing nothing before. And after all, maybe if I get to 30, maybe if I feel like it, I could try an hour. And then that's way better than nothing. So I'll just shoot for 30. But then you can break it down even more and say, well, maybe I want to study. I'll just study for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes. It's still better than nothing. And, if I study for 15 minutes, maybe then I'll feel like studying for 30 minutes. And who knows? And maybe after I study for 30 minutes, I could study for an hour. And an hour is way better than nothing. So that's good. You can set a plan to just 15 minutes out of that 2 hour block. That's it. That's still more studying. If that was a status bar, it's still more studying than the zero you did. But then let's break it down even more. What if you studied for just 2 minutes? What if you can't study much in 2 minutes? What if you just got your books out? And then if you just got your books out or your computer turned on, then that's all you have to do. So, we were doing pretty much nothing. And then if I just got my books out, then maybe I could study for just 15 minutes. And if I felt like it, then maybe I could study for 30 minutes. And 30 minutes is way better than nothing. But even if I got to 30 minutes, then maybe I might feel like going to an hour. And that'd be great because that's half of what I had planned. And then I have all this time for other activities. Or maybe I could even study up to 2 hours if I feel like it. But I could just stop at one, you tell yourself. So, okay, but you're still not down to the lowest minimum viable goal. Before you get your book out, because that's not always the easiest thing, you can maybe just stand up. Stand up from whatever you're doing. So, standing up from what you're doing, maybe if you just stood up from what you're doing, you might then go and get your books out and just put your books on the desk, your study session. And then if your books are in your study session, you might as well just study for 15 minutes because why not? 15 minutes is better than nothing. And then if you study for 15 minutes, maybe you feel like studying for 30 minutes. And you could always just stop at 30 because that's better than the nothing you did before with the procrastinating. And then so on and so forth. But that's not the most minimum viable goal either. You can back it up even further. You might say, you could look away from your device. Maybe you're on your device, and the hardest thing is often just starting. Just starting is often the hardest thing. So, what if you just looked away from your device? How hard would that be? I mean, maybe it'd be like 0.0001 level hardness. Like it's so low, it's so minimal. You could just simply look away. And if you looked away, then maybe you could stand up. And if you could stand up, you might as well just get your books out and put them on your study desk. And if you could just get your books out, then maybe you could study for 15 minutes. And then maybe 15 minutes is way better than the zero you were studying. So that's a win. But maybe after 15 minutes, you could just study 15 minutes longer and you'd have a total of 30. And then maybe after 30, you could do another 30 and you'd have an hour. And then you just stop there because that's way, way, way better than the zero you were getting. And then if at the hour you ask yourself, well, I could just do one more hour, you could put one more hour in and then you've gotten your study session of 2 hours. So it's this way of just agreeing to start. It might be looking away from your device. It may be taking 3 deep breaths. It might be counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you start like a countdown, like a launch. And you simply stand up, and from standing up, you get your books out. And from getting your books out, you study for 15 minutes, and then you can just stop. You don't need to go anymore, but maybe you want to keep going and you get to 30. You could just stop, but maybe you don't want to stop after 30 minutes. And you realize, you know what? I'll just keep going. It's easy to keep going. So then you study for an hour. So that's what's possible with this minimum viable goal. You break it down to starting. What does it take for me to start? And then you begin from there. And every chink in the chain is a win. If you get to stand up and then you go back to looking at the TV or looking at your device, okay, that's a win. That was step one. What's the least thing that you can commit to doing? If you get to standing up and you decide to get your books out, you got 2 wins. Way to go. And just up the chain. And you can celebrate, the first link in the chain. You can celebrate the second link in the chain. You can do something afterwards, and you can give yourself a reward. Like, I'm going to do something I wanted to do. I'm so happy. I'm so proud of myself that I got my books out. I'm so proud of myself I got to 15 minutes. I'm going to reward myself. And you can go on and so on and so forth. So these are the 4 study techniques that I talked about. Burn the ships, get your environment right, get a distraction cheat sheet, and work out what is your minimum viable goal. What's the easiest and most achievable thing that you can do to launch and propel you into your ultimate goal, which is getting better at content scattering, whatever it is that you're studying. So now you can make your own beds system. And what I would like you to do, take a picture of the screen right now, and I would like you to write down a list of things that distract you. Next, I want you to write down a list of changes that you could make to your environment to remove those distractions. Maybe a list of people's names that you could talk to tell them about your commitment to creating a distraction-free environment, a distraction-free block of time. Then make the changes to your environment. Next time that you have a focused study session, note any distractions on your distraction sheet and adjust your environment based on your sheet. Repeat this, notating the distractions and adjusting your environment over the process. Repeat this process for over 3 sessions. And that you're on to a fantastic start just by doing these things. They say, how do you help say you have a fish tank at home and your fish are looking really sick. They're like a weird color. They're not swimming as lively as they once were. And they're just not looking themselves. And each day that passes by, they kind of look slower, look a little worse. They're not eating their food. You got some sick fish. So how do you heal a sick fish? You change the water. You change the environment. I'm not a fish expert, but the point of the story is you change that water, you get the pH levels right, you adjust the, whatever you need to adjust in their environment. And you'd be amazed at how quickly those fish can get back on the, to feeling better and 100%, get their appetite back and moving around. But we're like the fish. We need to get our environments right. Right now, if you're struggling with procrastination, your environment's set up for your continued procrastination. And we need to do like shift gears. We need to shift gears from the environment that's set up for us to procrastinate and get distracted and go down rabbit holes to an environment that is set up for your success. I'm here for your success. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up with saying we've got one more free live tutoring session that is the Thursday the 30th. So next week, Thursday, where I am going to get into one super high leverage study skill that's going to really help you gain more knowledge more effectively as you open up these books and study for your boards. Also, some test taking tips. When you're selecting multiple choice answers and being ready for the test. So with that, I also want to say, after our live sessions are over, you can look forward to receiving weekly newsletters where I'll be discussing study tips that are very actionable, radiation therapy concept lessons, and also relevant links to YouTube videos that I believe will be able to help you in your study journey for your radiation therapy boards. I'd love to know what you're interested in reviewing, what you're currently learning, what you want help with. And you can reach out to me by chatting in the comments, as well as sending me an email when I send you the link for the video. Just reply to my email saying what you're currently working on or struggling with. And I'm here to help. I want to help. I am launching a new group study program on Discord where students from all over the country will be able to form or join this study group, online study group. You can study completely independent without others, or you can join a group of others from anywhere in the country that are they're radiation therapy students. This group is solely for radiation therapy students just like you. And you can study whenever and wherever on the Discord app. You simply log on and you can start a Pomodoro study session. And the benefit of that is you can track how much time that you are spending study, so it runs in the background. And you can compete for fun, exclusive radiation therapy badges on the leaderboard. And you can help increase your focus with these 25-minute Pomodoro sessions with 5-minute breaks and 15-minute sessions, 10-minute breaks. So you can break your studying sessions into small component parts, put your focus time in, take a break, put some more focus time in. It's a great way to chunk up your learning and keep your energy levels high and your focus high. As well as you'll have access to exclusive radiation therapy content that I'll be releasing on a weekly basis. And you'll get to meet other radiation therapy students, like I had mentioned, and ask them questions about what they're learning, about what they're having struggles with and what they know, and you can share information. So right now, it's being released on June 1st, and you can pre-order to get on the list by just simply replying to my email. And if you pre-order by June 7th, you will have lifetime access for just $30. So great value, just $30, access to the study group for radiation therapy students. Hope to see you inside.